So sometimes hearing somebody's story promotes mercy. And if you're watching online or if you didn't catch it during the clip just now, it's from Cinderella Man with Russell Crowe and Renee Zellweger. And it's during the Great Depression, and a boy has stolen a salami from the local butcher. And his dad, of course, is upset about this and takes him to the butcher to return it. But then the story comes out that the kid was afraid because one of his buddies had been shipped away to another family because the parents couldn't afford food. And all of a sudden it puts his behavior that's wrong into a different perspective and promotes kind of an empathy and a mercy. And I was talking to Rusty, our executive leader here this week, and one of the things we talked about is how nowadays people can't hear each other. Things are so polarized that you just don't hear anybody's perspective, and there's not a whole lot of mercy. And so the whole idea today is that if you'll listen to people, if you'll hear people, it will promote mercy in your life. We're in the middle of it's a one-off, one-on series called The Red Stuff, where we highlight the words of Jesus. In some Bibles, it's called red letter print Bibles, and the words of Jesus are printed in red. And so we're emphasizing the words of Jesus in the Bible with the MOAS, the mother of all sermons. We're talking about the Sermon on the Mount. And a lot of times nowadays, it's hard to know where to plant a flag. It's hard to know what hills are worth dying on. And I'm convinced that the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, those are places to plant flags. Those are the places to say, this is the line I've drawn in the sand. And there's a whole lot of lines that we draw that aren't necessary every single day. And we tend to be people who draw lines and stick very firmly to our lines without listening to people on the other side. And we've talked recently a lot about who Jesus called. And we talked about in his disciples, he called a zealot and he called a tax collector, which would be diametrically opposed in their society. They would hate each other. And yet he said, come be my disciples. And then when he called his disciples and went out to preach and preached to the masses, this is who he preached to, and this is what he said. He said, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. Notice he didn't say, come to me, all you who are righteous. He didn't say, come to me, all you who have perfected this thing and gotten this thing down and are doing well in life, and you rich and powerful. That's not who he said. He didn't even say those who live well, who don't steal, who don't lie, who don't cheat. He said, come those that are tired. And I think in some sense that describes basically everybody. We talked about the cross was this kind of posture. It was a posture of open arms, and open arms to all people. And then the Sermon on the Mount starts with what they call the Beatitudes, and they start with these blessed are the statements. And I'm going to fly through some of this. It's just a review from last week. But this word blessed is makarios in the Greek. And it's interesting that Jesus redefined this word. In Greek culture, when he spoke this word, makarios, the Greeks listening, and even the Hebrew people living in Greek society that listening would understand this particular word to mean a particular thing. And when we read Homer, it means the wealthy. So wealthy is what the statement would mean. Plato described it as one successful in business, better educated or rich. The Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, said the person with better stuff than an ordinary person. The Greeks in general, and Homer and Hesiod said that it's the gods within themselves. The gods themselves were makarios, this Greek word. And so they had this understanding that the rich, the powerful, the educated were the ones winning in culture and society. And Jesus changed this so much that they redefined the word after he was done. But he describes the makarios as the not-so-superheroes, the poor in spirit, as the something is missing, those who mourn, those who are aware they are frail, the meek, and the parched for the good, those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. And you'll notice this whole list is a list of the have-nots, not the haves. If you go back, the poor in spirit are somebody missing something in spirit and aware that they're missing something in spirit. The mourning, you only mourn when there's loss. The meek, there's a lack of bravado there. There's a lack of self-importance there. And those that hunger and thirst for righteousness are hungering and thirsting. They want something. So this whole list that Jesus says are makarios, the favored ones, the blessed ones, the great ones, are people who are missing everything. We talked about how it's kind of a list of the humble, the humble, the humble, the humble. Blessed are the humble. Blessed are the humble. Blessed are the humble. And it's so interesting. If you go to a Greek lexicon now, they've redefined it. So when you read ancient Greek texts like Homer and Plato and Hesiod, you find that they thought it was the rich people. Nowadays, if you read a Greek lexicon, Jesus turned this word on its head so much that it's been absolutely redefined, and now it means blessed, happy, free from worry or care, fortunate, blissful, inwardly content. He changed everything. We've been studying a book called What If Jesus Was Serious that kind of hits on the Sermon on the Mount by Skye Jethani. He says it in this. He says, at the time of Jesus, most believed the healthy, powerful, rich, respected, and educated were clearly favored by God. If your life looked good, it's because you must be good. And God has blessed you for your religious devotion, but the opposite was also thought to be true. If your life looked bad, it must be because you were bad, and God has cursed you. When Jesus issued the Sermon on the Mount, that's how people thought was, if your life is good, it's because God is on your side. If your life is bad, it's because God has cursed you. If you're wealthy, it's because God believes in you. If you're poor, it's because God doesn't believe in you. And Jesus got out in front of everybody, all the religious leaders of his time, the people that would gather en masse to follow him, and he said just the opposite. He says it's the have-nots that are blessed. It's the ones who have let go of this world, who don't invest in this place because this place is going down. Scott McKnight says this in that same book. He says, instead of blessing one who pursues wisdom and reason, and develops a reputation as a sage, has a good family, develops a reputation as a sage, has a good family, observes the whole Torah, has all the right friends, righteous, a leader. Instead, Jesus blesses those who no one else blessed. Jesus reached out to and elevated people that nobody else wanted to reach out to, that nobody else wanted to elevate. And so today we're getting into the fifth of the Beatitudes. We've got blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are those who are meek, those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. And today we get a new one. But I want to introduce you to a math equation, and it's not going to be hard math, so don't freak out. This is not calculus. It's a summation. A plus B plus D plus C plus D equals E. So the first four Beatitudes lead to the fifth Beatitude. When you add up what Jesus says in the first four, you arrive at the fifth. And when we find out that Jesus is for the poor in spirit, for those who mourn, for the meek, and for those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the list that we've described, A plus B plus D plus C plus D equals blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. What this means is anyone can be blessed. That's what the first four Beatitudes mean. You don't have to be super righteous. You don't have to be super spiritual. You don't have to have firm biblical knowledge. According to Jesus, those who are blessed, those who come to him, are just the tired folk. Those who are blessed are the meek. Those who are blessed are the ones who realize they don't have it all together. And that could describe anyone, anywhere. Anyone, anywhere could be tired. Anyone, anywhere could be mournful. Anyone, anywhere could realize they're poor in spirit. And when you start to realize that that's Jesus' perspective, it starts to alter your perspective. We're going to talk about the them, the us, and the me in the next three Beatitudes. Is what does it say about them? What does it say about us together? And what does it say about me? And what this says about them is that we need to promote mercy because anyone can be blessed. There's this movie called Light of My Life with Casey Affleck in it. And it's a post-apocalyptic movie where he's trying to protect his daughter, and females are in high demand in this post-apocalyptic world where most females have died. So he tries to kind of make her look masculine and tries to keep her away from culture and society because he's afraid she'll be taken away from him. But there's this one scene where he's instructing her. They're walking through the woods, and he's asking her about math, and he's asking her about philosophy and so forth. And he asks, what's the difference between morals and ethics? It's a really neat conversation. And he says, basically, that morals are ideas about right and wrong. It's what you think about what is good and evil. That's your morality. Your moral compass is made up of what you think directs you towards what is good. But then he says, what is ethics? And ethics is the application of morals in a real world. So it's one thing to say, for example, that stealing is wrong. It's another thing to embrace your child when you realize that he stole because he was afraid of being shipped away because he was afraid the family couldn't afford food. That's your ethic. Your ethic says now it's time to embrace the boy. Even though morally the dad can get up and say, we don't steal, he can say, come here, come to me, and I will hold you because I understand you. He heard the story and it changed his ethic. It didn't change his morals, it changed his ethic. And I want to confess, well, there's this idea called graded absolutism. And I'll confess right now that I'm way over my head here. I don't have a degree in philosophy. I don't have my doctorate in philosophy. And if you read even a cursory study of philosophy on ethics and morals, you find out that there's 1,000 different views out there. And I want to make that aware right now that even defining the terms is really difficult for even the most educated philosophers. But there's this concept called graded absolutism. And so place yourself in Nazi Germany. And you're hiding Jews in your closet, in a false wall behind your closet, right? And they've been there for weeks. And the SS comes knocking on your door. and they say, "Are you hiding Jewish people?" Now you're faced with this moral conundrum, right? Do I lie to the SS, or do I turn over the Jews living in my closet? And you see, the morality of the situation is that both of them have a moral compass or a moral center to them. It's wrong to lie. It's unacceptable to lie. It's also wrong to turn Jewish people over to the SS. But graded absolutism says that you have to have an ethic involved in each different particular situation that says which trumps which. So people try to present moral conundrums to say that there is no absolute morality. Graded absolutism says no, it just proves the point. It's a moral conundrum because there is objective morality. And you'll find that in all of life, all the time you're making these decisions. We look at Robin Hood. Now, Robin Hood was a thief and a bandit, right? But why do we celebrate him? He stole from the rich and gave to the poor, which morally is unacceptable. Ethically, it's a little bit dicey. It's a little bit grayer. If you sat down with Robin Hood and heard his story, odds are you would feel more empathy towards him. It wouldn't change your morals, but it might change your ethic. So when we see the story that the kid stole the sausage, the ethic says, I will embrace you, I understand. Imagine someone finds a wallet on the ground and the wallet has a bunch of cash in it, and they go spin that. And let's pretend hypothetically that they know who dropped the wallet. And they take the cash and they spend it. Now, the initial impulse of people is to say this person is morally not good, right? The morality of the situation says this: you did a bad thing. You should have returned the wallet. But what if we found out that his children hadn't eaten in days? Or that what if we even found out that his neighbor had a medical situation that he couldn't get help for unless he came up with some cash, and he said, wow, God has supplied me with his cash. Now, we would still morally say, unacceptable. You made the wrong decision in this situation. But our ethic would say, I get it. I completely understand. And I think you can make a scriptural basis that God operates in what we call graded absolutism. There's this proverb, Proverbs 6, it says, people do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy his appetite when he is hungry. But so ethically, you don't hate the man who steals bread. It's Jean Valjean versus Javert in Les Miserables. You understand the character because he was hungry. He hadn't eaten in days, and he saw a loaf of bread, and he took it, and he ate it, and he spent a long time in prison. And our morality starts to become conflicted because should they have spent all this time in prison for eating bread when they were just hungry? The ethic calls into question the application of the morals. But then this passage goes on, it says, but if this thief is caught, he will pay sevenfold. He will give all the goods of his house. There's a price to pay when you break moral law, even when ethics are part of the consideration. Super, super complicated. And then this passage continues. So this passage in Proverbs is Solomon trying to talk to his son about adultery. And he's trying to say that this will get you in a mess. And so he continues on. He says, but a man who commits adultery has no sense. Whoever does so destroys himself. Blows and disgrace are his lot, and his shame will never be wiped away. For jealousy arouses a husband's fury, and he will show no mercy when he takes revenge. He will not accept any compensation. He will refuse a bribe, however great it is. So Solomon is comparing these two moral, I don't want to say mistakes, sins. And he's saying one of them we get because the person stole out of need. One of them we don't get because the person cheated or stepped out of desire. It wasn't need, and we have less empathy than that. Now, I don't have time to get into this passage because it actually gets to be really, really complicated because a thief was required twofold, fourfold, or fivefold, and in this passage it's sevenfold, which means the thief is overpaying. It's a ridiculous passage to parse out, and we're not going to get into that, except to say that God seems to think every moral situation must be graded on an ethical level. Is we have to consider the situation before we lay down the law. Before we bring out judgment, we have to see deeper into the situation. Elsewhere, Jesus says, the servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. But the one who does not know and does the things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. He says judgment will be based on ignorance or knowledge is one of the things it says. So this is some kind of different grade, is did you know you should or shouldn't? And some people don't know, and some people do know, and God seems to indicate judgment will be different. Here's a terrifying passage of Scripture. My iPad's about to run out of juice back here, Booker, so you may be prepped to start running me through this. Everyone to whom much is given, much will be required. And conversely, what it means is if you've given little, you're not required so much. That God sees into each person, each situation, each circumstance, and will judge rightly. Here's this wild, wild passage where Jesus says, "Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the mighty works done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. It will be more bearable in the day of judgment for them than for you." He takes these two cities, and he says to the one city, he says, "I did miracles in you. In your city, I was out doing miracles in the streets, and you didn't turn to me. And here's these other cities that everybody considers ungodly, kind of a Sodom and Gomorrah type situation." He says, if I had been there doing what I did in their streets, what I did in your streets, they would have turned to me. He says, therefore, their judgment will be lesser. So it's mind-blowing if you think about it. What he's saying is people will be judged on what they would have done in particular circumstances that never even occurred. Jesus knows the heart and foundation of every human soul, and you don't. It gets this question of the stolen wallet or the question of the kid who steals salami gets really difficult when you start talking about like what we call the wildest madmen and worst, most sadistic people in the world. I read about the Golden State Killer that was just convicted recently. California, responsible for just absolute unbelievable atrocities. And as it turns out, he was locked in a closet as a child for long, long periods of times and beaten brutally to near death. I'm reading a book about neuroscience right now on the effects of PTSD, and what you find out is that PTSD in adults, there's particular treatments that have a quite high cure rate, like 45, 50%, that if somebody with adult onset PTSD will do these rapid eye movement drills and some other tactile response stuff, that there's a high response rate, there's a high cure rate. But with kids who had atrocities done to them as children, the cure rate is much, much less. And so when you look at the Golden State Killer, now, morally we can say what happened was wrong. Even ethically we can say because you're dangerous, you should be locked away forever. But only God knows the true ethic of the situation of the Golden State Killer. Only God knows where he will stand on Judgment Day, and you don't. These people are leaving to get ready for a baptism, in case you're wondering why everybody's filing out. He loves the Golden State Killer. I'm out of here. James 4 says there is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But who are you to judge your neighbor? Only God knows the ethics of every situation, and you don't. What you can do is try to explore and hear the story, because graded absolutism, see, God is an advocate of graded absolutism. And if we're going to follow God, then we need to be as well. And the only way to do that, so graded absolutism requires a moral compass. It requires a sense of right and wrong, but it also requires perception. That's actually a note to myself. You don't need to put that up on the screen. Thanks, bro. Only one lawgiver and judge. So in order to understand the situation, you have to dive in deep. And what that means is, let me hear your story. And that will promote mercy. We need to be people who hear other folks, because we don't understand them. We haven't walked a mile in their shoes. Every situation, every human being, in my opinion, deserves human mercy. Now, God may disagree, but God is the only judge, lawgiver, and advocate of people. He's the only one that understands all the ethics involved. Not our job. It's his job. That's why it says judgment without mercy is to one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. So I have 4 tips for you before we start dunking some people here. Isn't that exciting? We're going to dunk some people in our cattle trough this morning. It's pretty great. Number 1 is to be the benevolent. There's this passage that's quoted in virtually every wedding around the United States and sometimes around the world. It's 1 Corinthians 13. They call it the love chapter, and it describes what love is. And some of the things you see in there is it says love always protects, always trusts. And I want to focus on this, always hopes. It means giving people the benefit of the doubt. It means hoping the best for everyone. Even the worst of the worst, the dredges of society, love demands that we hope the best for them. We don't hate and dismiss. And we protect, we enforce morality, and our ethic considers every situation. But our heart is hope towards people. And so to be the benevolent, it means you give people the benefit of the doubt. You listen to them, you hear their story, and you let them speak. We talked about this Greek word for mercy is eleos, and to hear another is eleos. Isn't it true that all of us really desperately want to be heard? I mean, we want that so badly in our lives. We want people to know us. We want to know and to be known. And it's a mercy just to hear. It's a mercy just to try to understand. And I want to encourage you to hear the story and make stuff up in your head. So, for example, let's say you're at a restaurant this afternoon, and your food comes out cold, and the server is rude. What are some positive things you might think about the server as you make up their story? Because love always hopes, and you're hoping the best for them. Why would a server be rude? What are some thoughts? Overworked. They've been on their feet for hours, and they're just tired. They're hangry. They haven't eaten. They're frustrated. What else? Underpaid, right? Like, why should I even work this job? It's not making my ends meet. What else? People have been rude to them. Now, can we all say morally that doesn't give you the excuse to be rude to someone? But ethically, we can look at the situation and say, but can I give you a hug? Can I embrace you? That's what we're talking about here, is we give people the benefit of the doubt. We think things through, and we make stuff up. I want to encourage you to stop the stink eye. I posted my golf swing on a forum called Dude, Where's My Par recently. And I made the mistake of taking my golf swing and doing it in no shoes, so I'm barefoot in the picture, which caught all kinds of flack from people. But I said, on this, I posted my golf swing, 2 videos, front forward and side to side, and said, what should I be working on? Let me share some of the answers that these trolls posted. What should I be working on in my golf swing? Chess. Not sucking. Now, I almost couldn't say that in church, but there was definitely some other stuff that I will not say in church or repeat, even in mixes, repeat at all. One person said, your sister, which I completely don't understand. Finding a new hobby. Quitting. Croquet. Trolls, all of them. One guy says, your swing is awful. If you're looking for compliments, you came to the wrong place. So here's what I did. My wife said, man, I'd be so mad. And I just thought, these people, their moms gave them floppy bacon growing up, right? They're like you make up stories about people and say, why are these people trolls? And part of it is the culture of the board. Dude, Where's My Par is a trollish board. I posted it on a couple others and I had one pro take my swing and analyze it in slow motion and draw the lines with his software and tell me what I needed. Super, super nice people. So part of my thinking about these people is they're just trolls because they're a group of trolls that have groupthink going on, right? But they also had floppy bacon growing up as a child. Proverbs 19:11 says it's to one's glory to overlook an offense. I'm going to grab my Bible right here. You want to? Turn to James 2:1-4. I'm going to fly through this. I want to encourage you in practice and in principle to fling favoritism. There are certain people in our lives that we tend to give the benefit of the doubt, and certain people that we don't. And some of that is racial, some of it's socioeconomical, some of it's their background in jobs, some of it's blue collar, white collar, some of it is they're not your family and you're tied. There can be 1,000 reasons why you automatically look down on someone or view someone else as in a separate category from yourself. But in James chapter 2, verses 1-4, if you've got your mobile devices, grab that and read along with me. It says, my brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ must not show favoritism. Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, here's a good seat for you, but say to the poor man, you stand there, or sit on the floor at my feet, have you not discriminated among them and become judges with evil thoughts? Listen, my dear brothers and sisters, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor. Is it not the rich who are exploiting you? Are they not the ones who are dragging you into court? Are they not the ones who are blaspheming the noble name of him to whom you belong. Now, we read a passage like this, and typically we dismiss it because we automatically assume ourselves the good guy, right? We all automatically assume, well, it obviously doesn't mean me, but I want you to examine yourself and take some time and say, do I do this? Here's a litmus. We have people from various socioeconomic backgrounds in our church today. We have people of various races. We have people of various ages, right? Who do you hang out with as soon as service is over? Are they just the people like you? Or is it people who look completely different than you? Who own less than you or more than you? If you have this tendency to hang out with yours and keep yours, I think God would say, you got kind of a lousy ethic here. He would say, find people who are not like you, hear their stories, and maybe it'll change your perspective on long-held stuff that has held you down. I also want to encourage you to read in your own time 1 Corinthians 1, 26 through 28, which says something similar. But ultimately, the goal today is that you'll hear someone else. Ultimately, the goal today is that you'll understand that right judgment requires a right ethic, and right ethic always requires right perception, and right perception always requires hearing. It requires listening. So you got somebody you can't stand? Listen. You got someone that rubs you the wrong way or that you think doesn't fit into your group or your clique? Listen. Take the time to hear their story.